Trystie's Quest, or Kit, King of the Pigwidgeons. By Greville MacDonald. Chapter 9. An important person appears, so does curdle the bead purse. Trystie's happy voyage. Her arrival at the island. So much for what I saw. No one must believe all his eyes tell him if he is too lazy to see for himself. But when you use your eyes yourself, just to look through so that they let you yourself out and into the things they let you see, why, then you must believe. Otherwise there is no difference between believing and commonplace seeing. A cat may look at a king and will know him at once for a very grand person, but it takes a pair of loving eyes to see that the grand person is something much more than a king, a good and tender-hearted man indeed. The cat sees the king all right, but a wise child's eyes make him believe in the man. If there were no such difference, everything would be just too stupid to be worth believing. I stood up and rubbed my eyes. The black cloud unswallowed a bit of the moon again, and I saw that the surface of the dew pond, as I looked down upon it, was still covered by ripples that came lapping to my feet. The heap of thistledown was all blown away. I looked about for Trystie, wondering whether I had fallen asleep and if she had found her way home again. I gave a little shiver, rubbed my eyes and stooped to pick up my crook, the iron of which was coruscating with a blue glitter, although the moon had again disappeared. Then I saw looking up at me a little fellow, standing no higher than my knee. He was dressed in close-fitting Lincoln green, with a scarlet-pointed hood ending in a long tassel. He had a silver belt that shone with a light like my crook's, though brighter and more wavy. He made me a bow and spoke with a delicious Irish brogue. "It's myself, the leprechaun at your service, Sir Shepherd. Is it the fairy water you would be drinking and go after the pretty colleen?" Then he laughed and ran to the top of the hill that here gently slopes down to the dew pond. He was so quick that, but for his shining belt, I could hardly have kept him in sight. Then he seemed to lie down and to begin rolling down the grassy slope, and so fast that I could see nothing but his belt. It appeared to be unrolling towards me, one end remaining at the top of the hill. Its brightness grew more wavy and glittered more, spreading out as it came rippling towards me. It was a long belt indeed and had no ending except at the beginning of it, as its owner once said to Trystie. It rushed and sparkled and began to sing like a brook dancing over mossy rocks and shiny pebbles. It came up to my feet and ran on into the dew pond with a splash and a rush. The leprechaun, as well as the fairy seaport and the island, were nowhere to be seen. I felt terribly thirsty, and was just putting my mouth down to drink when I remembered what might happen. I had more than once drunk fairy water before, when my need had been greater. It had, the first time, taken me into fairyland and enabled me to find our Princess Honeypot who had been stolen. But I had promised my wife never to leave her again. Indeed, it would have been anguish to me to do so. That Trystie was safe I was quite sure. I pulled my mouth back from the water just in time. The brook, with its light and its music, vanished, and I found Curdie leaping upon me in the wildest joy because he had found me. So we went home, I still thirsty, but now rather for my own well water than the fairy brook. As I reached the farm, there was the mother waiting for me. It appeared that she too had heard the click of the latch and had come down the stair only to find me gone. But for some ill-defined reason she went upstairs again for Trystie. She, of course, was gone also. It looked strange. Curdie too could not be found, though he always sleeps in the kitchen. She called him and heard his bark far away. Kit came running down. He went to see if Curdie could be shut up in the barn, because his bark sounded like it. There he was sure enough, and up on the gable platform. He had climbed the ladder, but was hesitating how to get down again, though he would have jumped and risked a shaking, I think, if no ladder had been there. So Kit helped him down. The mother told the dog what the trouble was, and that he must fetch his master and Miss Trystie home. Away he sped and found me, but not Trystie. It did not take me long to tell the mother and Kit the story, yet the dawn was breaking by the time it got to the fairy brook of which I would not drink because of my promise. We were too anxious about Trystie to go to bed again that early morning. Like most people, we did not yet trust or altogether believe in fairyland, in spite of its being so near us. Indeed, we could not feel positive that I had not been dreaming. At 3:30 I roused the men and we all went to search the downs. Curdie had gone off again immediately he had brought me home, and we felt almost certain he would find Trystie and bring her back if it was possible. Again and again had we proved his sagacity when he was sent to find a lost sheep or a strayed child, and he never failed. Also we had but to remember how more than once he had saved my own life, to feel almost content as to Trystie's safety. Still the everyday, unbelieving part of us could not stop the search. I did not come home again till breakfast time. Curdie had arrived just before me, bringing in his mouth Trystie's little bead purse. It gave the mother a terrible shock, and suggested at first that this was all he could find of her. But I opened it. There lay, along with the child's lucky sixpence, a little packet made of minute blue hummingbird's feathers, sewn together with threads as fine as a spider's. We unfolded the packet, you may imagine how carefully, and found it packed full of thistledown. "Only thistledown!" exclaimed the mother, and between tears and happiness she understood that it was Trystie's message. She called Kit into the porch to see. Kit looked at it for one moment, exclaimed "I know," and fetched his recorder. At the moment his piping began, a puff of wind came down from the hills and set the thistledown flying in quantities far greater than we could have stuffed into that little packet of blue feathers. The wind carried every bit of it away over the downs and out to the sea. But we still had the magic packet. We have it still, should anyone like to see it. Now I will set down Trystie's adventures as she told them to us afterwards. She had the happiest voyage to the island. Though the ship tossed up and down and rolled from side to side, though the wind whistled in the shrouds and the timbers creaked, though the spray blew over her and drenched her face, it was all so merry and jolly. She felt just like the red-beaked oyster-catcher who sat on the waves quite close to her ship and sang merrily about sad things. He wore a tight-fitting little green jacket. This was his song: "My wings soar above old Earth's troubled love, I laugh and she weeps at the dangerous sea, though rain torrents splash, though thunder clouds crash, the storm is no more than a plaything to me." It's a fairy bird, thought Trystie, or he would not think so lightly of trouble and danger, I am sure. And it must be a fairy storm, or it would be awful. Yet it's only so jolly. She had become, I think, more of a typical child than we had ever seen her. She often would make us feel as if she belonged to some country far away. Older people sometimes have such a look in their eyes, but happy children only seldom. How long the voyage lasted Trystie could not say. The island got nearer and nearer. The water became still and clear so that she could see down to the bottom of it. There she beheld what looked like a ruined city, where the houses were all single shells arranged in mean streets and wide avenues. But the only inhabitants were crabs, who had dressed themselves up in human-like clothes of all kinds, some gaudy, some but rags perhaps left behind by people who once had lived in the city. They looked really more absurd than naked crabs, because even the fine and sparkling clothes did not help them to walk straight like Christians. Trystie had ample time for observation, as her ship was now going very slowly. She felt sure it must be the place from which she had once run away to find her fairy godmother. She remembered also that it must be somewhere down there that the iron chest would be found where all the children's choose-keys were locked up. But now the ship entered a shady bay, where noble beech trees, growing down to the water's edge, rose high above the masts. The bay narrowed and the trees grew closer, and their boughs met over the sails, which still shimmered in rainbow colors, as they flapped in the still moonlit air. Then the airy sailors rigged in the jibboom, swarmed up the shrouds, and close-reefed the square sails. Back they all sped to their oars, and the muffled rhythm of their rowing so mingled with their songs and the increasing night in the deep woods, through which the river was winding, that Trystie, tired with her own happiness, fell fast asleep. When she awoke, the same feeling of happiness was with her. So strong was it that, while her eyes were still shut, she felt she must jump up and have a run on the downs before she started the children on their tubbing and dressing. But when she did open her eyes, she knew all about it. Knew, indeed, that she was in Fairyland and was come to find her godmother. Then a little pang of grief shot through her heart, for she remembered that at home we should be anxious about her, and that her mother would have all the getting up to do, as well as managing the breakfast, not to mention the dairy, the strawberry jam that had to be made that day, and those awful holes in Robin's stocking. All these things, however, she couldn't help now, and her mind was greatly relieved when she remembered that Kirsty was expected home that very day. But she did long and long to be able to send a message to let us know she was quite safe and happy. At last the ship rode at anchor by a grassy bank with yellow irises standing like sentinels by the riverside, and those wonderful ranunculuses called globe flowers scattered over the little glade before her. Trystie jumped ashore. All around stood beech trees, the like of which she had never seen before. Their great swinging boughs reached out into the glade, mysterious solitudes crept away and away into a deep wood where the great smooth trunks shot straight up to the leafy roof. Then Trystie looked back at her ship. It was all falling to pieces, no, not pieces, but wings. The masts and the decks and the oars were undoing themselves and mixing together into a cloud of thistledown, fluttering and clinging together as if in agitation about what it was to do next. Then the rainbow sails all came undone into little butterfly wings and the tiniest feathers, all madly flying about in intersecting circles and spirals and parabolas. Soon nothing was left of the ship but a great shining white cloud against the shadow of the trees, shot and spangled with soft jewelly colors. The cloud began to settle down on the grass, and then Trystie found it was really made up of thistledown and tiny wings of butterflies and feathers of humming birds, with the colors of copper, silver, gold, blue steel, all changed into light softness. Oh, she wished she could just wrap up some of this fairy ship and send it home, then they would understand, she knew. Most curiously, yet quite naturally, as the cloud fell down, there stepped from the middle of it the leprechaun. He bowed down to the ground. Princess, he said, it's myself will be the captain of your fairy ship. Me crew remain on board till she is safe in dock, there to await your will and pleasure. Mighty pleased will I be, and every one of me men, to do your bidding. So Trystie told him how much she wanted to send some of the thistledown home. She had kept her bead purse round her neck when she went to bed, that she might still treasure it in her sleep. She could now pack some of the thistledown into it, she said, as she had nothing else to hold it safely. Instantly there leaped out of the cloud 2 shining sailors. They quickly picked out hundreds of blue feathers, took from their pouches needles and spider twine, sat down cross-legged, and stitched the feathers together to make a little square packet. This they stuffed with thistledown, tied it up with more of the twine, and gave it to the child. Then she unfastened from her neck the gay little purse, put the shimmering blue packet into it, alongside of the sixpence with the hole in it, and offered it to the captain. But, instead of accepting it, he took off his shining belt, waved it round his head in 3 lightning flashes of silver light and whistled like a blackbird. Out of the wood came rushing to Trystie who, but Curdie, nor would the brave dog undertake his mission till he had had a great romp with the child. He rushed round and round her at full speed, in mighty approval of himself and Trystie and the grassy glade. Then he lay suddenly down at her feet, and she put her hand out to take his collar, but he was off again round and round, then away into the woods and out of sight. But, sure enough, back again Justo lie down panting at her feet. After which, and some caressing from Trystie, he became sober. Then at her bidding he sat up on his hind legs to get his instructions. He was just to carry the purse straight back to the farm and tell them all she was safe and happy, and would of course come back as soon as her godmother sent her, and, please, her dear love to Kirsty, and would she see about Robin's stockings? In half a minute I will be there, Miss Trystie, said the precise Curdie, who always thought anything he was in a hurry to do would take only half a minute. He spoke as plainly, though a trifle barkily, as any dog need. It's only 2 miles, you know. But I'll be back soon in my own shaggy ship with never a rudder to wag and steer with. Then he disappeared among the trees, holding Trystie's little treasure in his teeth as tenderly as if he were a cat carrying her blind kitten. That Curdie should come and go and speak like this was not at all surprising to Trystie, for she well knew, as indeed did I and the mother, that he was half fairy. Booth had some painful adventures to go through with Kit before he would meet Trystie again, and it was she had to deliver them, not the other way about. End of this chapter.